Siskel Ebert review. Brandon Lee seeking revenge on the men who killed him in The Crow. Every day's a new day for Detective Dana Carvey in Clean Slate. And Alfre Woodard has her hands full raising 5 kids in Spike Lee's Crooklyn.
A family of 5 children entertained themselves in front of the TV set in the 70s in Spike Lee's latest picture, Crooklyn, a different kind of movie from Spike Lee and one of 5 new films we'll be reviewing this week on Siskel and Ebert, along with the movie that claimed the life of Brandon Lee, Bruce Lee's son, plus the latest comedy with Dana Carvey. I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune.
And I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times. Our first film is Spike Lee's Crooklyn, and this is obviously a film close to Lee's heart. He says it's not autobiography, but it's inspired by the years when he was growing up in Brooklyn, and it recalls a world before crack, before guns, and a family and a neighborhood that both worked. Co-written by Lee with his sister Joie Susanna Lee and his brother Sankey Lee, it's set in the early 1970s when 4 brothers and a sister in the Carmichael family share a noisy household here with the Partridge family.
Went to sleep with you all my life. Is the TV on? No!
The story is told mostly through the eyes of the only girl in the family named Troy and played by Zelda Harris. After her parents have a fight, she gives some unsolicited advice to her father, a musician played by Delroy Lindo.
Troy, your father's sorry about last night.
It's not your fault, Daddy.
You know, Daddy doesn't want to fight or yell or scream or holler. All Daddy wants to do is play his music.
The mother is played in a strong and effective performance by Alfre Woodard.
Come on, Mommy. Why I gotta eat this?
Black-eyed peas have calcium.
All the calcium in the world ain't gonna make up for this nasty taste.
It might have made up for your broke arm.
Crooklyn isn't a movie that's heavy on plot. It's heavier on memory, and it's a very personal film in which Lee and his brother and sister try to understand the daily pressures on the father, a gifted but financially unsuccessful musician, and the mother, a hard-working school teacher who never has quite enough money to make ends meet. The movie has some surprises in it, some of them sad ones, but it also has a very thoughtful message. Spike Lee seems to be asking why this safer and healthier world disappeared from America's inner cities and whether it could somehow be rebuilt.
I like the film, too. There's one big glaring error I think he makes in the picture. Let me get rid of that, and then I'm going to start complimenting the film again.
Okay.
And that's when she goes off for a trip to relatives in the South, and he compresses the images using an anamorphic lens and makes everything seem squeezed tight. And people are going to wonder whether the projectionist is out of sync or something. And it was a mistake because I think the material, the world there, would have been so different. We could all see it that he didn't need to do that gimmick.
Well, one thing that also caught my attention, one thing that Spike Lee has done in his films, almost alone among filmmakers, is to experiment with visual styles. For example, the people who are walking and they look like they're floating, or in this movie, the 360-degree shot.
There's lots of different shots.
And I think you have to give him credit, Gene, for trying to portray the fact that this world looks so alien to that young girl that it just doesn't look like the real world at all. I think audiences will get used to it. They'll accept it. They can learn from this show that there's nothing wrong with the projectionist.
The strengths of the picture far override any of the mistakes. The strengths are that I like that a more adventures movie makes is not tell a conventional story.
Yeah.
I will say that after the first 20 minutes, people are going to be sitting there wondering when the conventional story is going to kick in, and it doesn't. He's building a mosaic of this family, these characters, and we feel the pressures. Like in few family films, we really feel the pressures, particularly on the dad. He gives a real strong performance. It's a complicated portrayal of a father, realistic. We don't have any movies about young black women at all. We just don't get them at all. And here is one with this character. I enjoyed the picture a lot.
I did too. He didn't try to make it into an artificial story that ends, because after all, childhood is a beginning. And at the end of this film, you realize that they're on the launching pad now for whatever is going to happen later.
It's a good piece of work.
Okay.
Now our next movie, and we step way down in class here with Dana Carvey in Clean Slate, a dismal comedy about a private detective who loses his memory every time he falls asleep. That's particularly troublesome because he's supposed to testify in a big crime trial. The dismal running joke in this film is that every morning when he wakes up without memory, he always has to pretend to remember someone when he doesn't really remember them. Like this lovely young woman he finds in his apartment. She's played by Valeria Golino.
By the way, how's Dolby doing?
Dolby? He's, great.
Really? I heard he was shot.
Except for that, yeah.
Another dull example of Carvey trying to fake it. He's on the run from the crooks, and he stumbles on stage to give a lecture about a subject he obviously doesn't understand, and before an audience who thinks he's somebody else.
This is the path we took. It was a good path, a red path, a path of many moods. We started here. Then we went here, here, down here, over here, here, and ended up here.
Clean Slate has been written without wit because of the terribly awkward premise of the film.
Yes. You have to memorize your testimony. The only way to get Cornell off our backs is to put him in jail.
Okay. What testimony? What do I say?
Here.
What?
Listen to this.
Okay.
Comb.
Testimony. It doesn't work. It doesn't work.
The climactic trial is even worse as Carvey is outfitted with a malfunctioning earpiece with Golino supposedly feeding him instructions. But the batteries have worn out.
Answer the question, Mr. Pogue.
Before I give my address, I'd like to state one thing for the record. That's a fabulous pen.
Nothing in Clean Slate works. Carvey is pleasant enough, but when that's all you can say about a comedy, you know you're in a lot of trouble. The villain is a weak cartoon character, all bluster. There is no energy or pacing to the story, and I would submit that the central premise is a real bore, necessitating repetition as he keeps forgetting day after day. It's been 2 days since I've seen Clean Slate. I can't wait to forget it.
Boy, I liked it more than you did, Gene.
Enough to recommend it?
Yes, I do. Yeah, and you know, the scene that you thought was so boring, I liked when he's faking that lecture, and he doesn't know what the subject is, but he has to be out there on stage because people are chasing him. It's actually borrowed from The Third Man, a similar situation in The Third Man. I laughed. The audience around me laughed. It was pretty funny the way he did that. And there are other moments in the movie that are pretty funny, too, including the dog with a depth perception problem that's always running into the wall. You forgot to mention that.
We see that at the opening of the movie.
Yeah, and I got a big laugh.
That was funny. That was the last time I laughed.
Actually, this is basically just the flip side of Groundhog Day, which you liked a lot. I thought that this movie, while it wasn't in that category, nevertheless...
Groundhog Day had some heart to it. There was a lesson that was learned. There was no lesson learned here.
No, it's a different kind of movie.
There was a love story. It's hardly the flip side suggests there's an equality
the story,
there.
which you thought was so stupid, though, is the flip side of a story you didn't think was stupid.
There was an evolution within the days as Bill Murray played them out. There wasn't any evolution here.
Okay, when we come back, Brandon Lee's final film, The Crow.
You didn't say goodbye.
You're just gonna have to forgive me for that.
So you're him, huh? The Avenger. The killer of killers.
I just want him.
Brandon Lee plays the Crow in that scene, a murdered rock musician who comes back to life and vows revenge against the evil mastermind behind a gang of thugs who killed him and his fiancée on the eve of their wedding. Well, as everybody knows, Brandon Lee himself was accidentally shot dead during the filming of The Crow when a prop gun mistakenly had a lethal charge in it. And that adds a special poignance to this movie because not only does the story ironically mirror real life, but Lee is so good here and the movie is so good that this could easily have been the beginning of a starring career for him. Just look at the visual mood of this scene where Lee, as the Crow, bursts from the grave and prepares himself for his mission of vengeance.
So slide right down and close your eyes.
Here's another example of the movie's inspired look as the Crow plans a special death for one of the men responsible for the 2 murders. The story of The Crow is a pretty straightforward revenge fantasy. The murdered man comes back from the grave and goes looking for those who destroyed his life. What's special about the film is its look, its style, and its energy. Director Alex Proyas has put together sort of a cross between Blade Runner and Batman, but darker, grungier, and more threatening than either one of those pictures. And Brandon Lee, in his last performance, shows here that he clearly had the potential to become a major action star.
Well, I don't compare this film favorably to either Blade Runner or Batman. I don't think it's as good as either one of those. And I think it does borrow from Blade Runner in particular, the physical look. And that, I think Blade Runner probably is going to go down in history as one of the most influential art-directed pictures of all time. And I do think that the story is, as you described it, straightforward revenge fantasy. What I do like the comic book camera angles. I do like him. I think he is charismatic, but I can't recommend the picture because the story bored me so much, Roger.
Well, Gene, comic books have stories like this, and I think that this is a very daring attempt to film a comic book.
Yeah.
I think that the whole movie is a piece. For example, all the heavy metal music on the soundtrack is very effective. The look of the film is sensational when the camera is flying over that city, which is made out of miniatures and special
for example,
effects.
I thought that the stories in both the pictures you named were more complicated, both Batman, another comic book story, and also Blade
Runner story was so complicated that even after the director's cut came out, nobody was able to explain it. That isn't the point here, Gene. This movie is an experience. It's not a story. All these stories are made up anyway.
Why did you describe it as a straightforward revenge fantasy? I'm using your own words. Because you know that the story is not.
I wasn't criticizing it. I was describing it as that.
I'm criticizing it because with all of the good looks in the picture, it got very repetitive for me.
You go to see a movie like The Crow in order to have a nice subtle.
No, I go to see a movie like The Crow have some complication of the story so that all that I don't see is the rain, and the visual look of the picture.
Okay, well, I saw more. Coming up next, a baby shower is the catalyst for several women coming to terms with their own baby fever.
But it's a big thing for me. I can't do it singly. I don't want to. I don't want to be inseminated with one of those turkey basters because that's just not romance to me.
That's one of the many women in Baby Fever talking about her desire to have a child, and this modest little film called Baby Fever turns out to be most enjoyable, I think, as it presents at least a dozen women talking about babies that they want to have or don't want to have or afraid to have or afraid not to have. The central character is a woman named Jenna, played by Victoria Foyt, who is dying to have a child, but not by her creepy former lover. He's played by Eric Roberts, playing an unreliable actor who tries to get her to lend him some money by exploiting her desire to have a child.
What's here right now is no different from who was living with you when we lived together, except in the fact that I know what you are now.
So now you appreciate me.
Oh, yeah.
Now you want to have a baby, now.
Another boyfriend, her current one, also is defined by the baby issue, particularly when she informs him that she might be pregnant.
I'm not sure whether you look happy about that or not.
Wow. Baby Fever was directed on a shoestring by Henry Jaglom, and he has a casual style, simply grabbing conversations about subjects important to women.
It's not over when you're 40. We're just starting to learn about pregnancy after 40, because now that's more the time in terms of economics, in terms of our lives, 40 and up.
And you make a much better mother. I mean, you're not in competition with your kids.
It's more like being a grandparent, emotionally, in terms of the calm, the detachment. No, excuse me, you don't have that intense ego. There can be some wonderful, wonderful benefits to it.
Baby Fever also has a sequence where the many women at this baby shower simply face the camera and talk about babies. And I thought that it all worked together in aggregate, presenting points of view about an issue obviously central to the experience of being a woman. I think any woman is going to have a lot of moments of recognition while watching Baby Fever.
I enjoyed it too, Gene. I think that like a lot of Henry Jaglom's films, it's too long. He's kind of like the guest at a party or the host at a party who doesn't want to cut off any of his guests.
I felt that way before, but not with this one.
Okay, I thought that some of the same ideas were repeated by different women. On the other hand, I enjoyed the feeling of spontaneity in the film, and I also enjoyed a supporting performance by Zach Norman as the husband of the woman who's throwing the party, and he's obviously broke.
Right.
And there's a funny scene where she says, there was a picture on this wall this morning. Now, what happened to it? Right. And that kind of running thread provides a counterpoint to the more serious stuff. So I liked it.
I think that this notion I said about women talking to each other in the movies, when I was watching that, I said, I don't hear conversations like this. And there was a movie, and also some of this dialogue features, it could have come out of therapy sessions or out of luncheons that women have had. The movie Angie was about a woman having a baby, Gina Davis, and there was made-up dramatic dialogue. I think a lot of this dialogue is a little bit more realistic and credible.
Okay, when we come back, the great filmmaker Ingmar Bergman writes a screenplay about his childhood, and his own son directs it. Sunday's Children is next. Bergman in Sweden. Ingmar Bergman ranks, of course, as one of the greatest directors in the history of the movies. When he retired from directing 12 years ago, he turned his attention to the stage and to writing. His screenplay for the 1992 film Best Intentions told the story of the early days of his parents' marriage, and now comes Sunday's Children, the story of Ingmar's relationship with his father. What makes this story even more special is that the film has been directed by Bergman's 32-year-old son, Daniel. The movie takes place in the 1920s over the course of a few days of a summer vacation spent in a home where the young boy becomes aware that his parents are not happy in their marriage. When his father, a minister, asks him if he would like to come along on a bicycle trip to a nearby church, the boy eagerly accepts. What we get throughout the film is a portrait of a comfortable, almost idyllic summer, but yet a summer when the young boy begins to realize that all is not as it seems in the world. A favorite bachelor uncle, for example, feels himself trapped by a domineering mother.
Och tant tycker inte att vi är oartiga, men...
Du får gärna säga nej för egen del, Erik, men nu så har jag talat med åkeriet.
Jag tycker att Erik ska få improvisera.
There are flash forwards throughout the film showing the son at 50 years old talking to his father, who is now quite elderly.
Jag avskyr alla former av känslomässig utpressning. Var och en får stå för sina misstag. Om far söker samförstånd eller förklaring eller kanske rent av någon form av förlåtelse, så har far vänt sig till fel person.
It's interesting how sunny the surface of Sunday's Children is and how deep the shadows are. And it's interesting, too, to see how Daniel Bergman directed this material by his own father. In fact, it makes you wonder if someday he'll write his own movie about Ingmar. Sunday's Children is a very thoughtful and very beautiful movie.
But also hard-edged. I mean, the violence that the father displays toward the child on the trip is very real, and it's not sugar-coated in any other way. And I like that. I think that one of the exciting things for me about this film is that it has the familiar pattern of the Sunday sweet memory, but it is a very hard-edged picture. And the title, Sunday's Children, the children of this stern religious father, I think cuts a couple of different ways here. It's a strong piece of work. I like that not a full accommodation is made later on. His father has done something wrong, precisely what we're not exactly sure, has done something wrong, and we realize that this child who grew up with this father has very complicated feelings about his father. They're unresolved, even late on
It's not a simple movie. You know, another thing about Sunday's Children, both Ingmar Bergman and his father were born on Sundays, and there's a legend that Sunday's Children can see ghosts. And in his review in the New Republic, Stanley Kaufman had a very nice line where he says that the director can see the ghosts inside of people, which is really what this movie is about, because this boy's father is haunted, and the boy can see it.
Okay, coming up next, my video pick of the week, inspired by this show's many films about children, a recommendation of an excellent film about kids that was not the hit it should have been when it was released last year.
Video pick of the week, brought to you by Orville Redenbacher, the first and last name in popcorn.
One of the biggest surprises of the movie year last year for me was the box office failure of The Secret Garden, the superb film of the children's classic story that was a long-running hit on stage in New York recently. And why the movie failed at the box office, I don't know. But good news, you have a second chance. It's available now on home video. If you don't know the story, it's about a young orphaned English girl forced to move in with wealthy relatives into their brooding mansion. At first, she's terrified by the housekeeper of the mansion, played by Maggie Smith.
There are near 100 rooms here. This one and no other is yours. Don't expect to see your uncle, because it's certain you won't. You are not to touch anything, and you're not to go wandering and poking about.
Later, she befriends the other kids in the household and neighborhood as they explore the estate's forbidden secret garden, which has the power to transform all things.
Over here. Smile.
The Secret Garden movie is a first-class treatment of this story. It's my video pick of the week. Now let's recap the movies we reviewed on the show. 2 thumbs up for Spike Lee's Crooklyn, a sweet, loving, funny portrait of characters too rarely seen in the movies nonviolent African Americans. A split vote on Clean Slate, a comedy with Dana Carvey losing his memory every single day. I found neither laughs nor thrills in this misadventure, but Roger thought the story gimmick worked. We split again on The Crow with the late Brandon Lee. I thought it had more style than a compelling story, but Roger thought the movie was inspired and that Lee's performance could have led to bigger things. 2 thumbs up for Henry Jaglam's Baby Fever, a surprisingly effective series of random thoughts about women and babies. And 2 more thumbs up for Sunday's Children, a childhood reminiscence, scripted by the great Ingmar Bergman, and that's probably the best film we're reviewing today.
Yes, I think it probably is. Okay, that's it for this week. Next week we'll be back with Maverick, starring Mel Gibson, Jodie Foster, and James Garner, in a recreation of the classic TV series, and Widow's Peak, a comic mystery starring Mia Farrow, Joan Plowright, and Natasha Richardson. That's next week, and until then, the balcony is closed.